I loved her with every breath I took, but I never imagined that one day I'd be the one left gasping for air. The day she left, something in me snapped, something primal, something dark. I can still hear the echoes of her last words, see the flash of her goodbye smile. They haunt me, tearing at the edges of my sanity, pushing me to the brink. And now, as I stand on the precipice of the abyss, I ask myself, was it love or just the cruelest illusion life ever played on me? A bud blooms. The big black stallion, a horse among horses as far as I was concerned, was following us as Alana and I walked slowly back towards the corral and the huge horse barn. He was constantly trying to stick his head between ours as if he were going to miss something. I found it humorous while Alana took it in stride. Alana said with a playful tone, "You had to get one that is clever in how he seeks your attention. I wonder if it will be a challenge down the line." "He's just a young adult like yours," I replied. "As he matures, he will settle down." We were holding hands, taking our time and enjoying the mid-morning sun. It was nice to see spring finally taking hold in the northwest. We were discovering together that the horse I had yet to name had a playful, almost youthful nature. Being a large, young male horse, it was quite natural for him to be curious and engaged with us. I saw this curiosity as a reflection of his spirited personality. Clearly, my thoughts regarding him had made an impression. His devotion and loyalty towards me felt firmly established. Alana noted that I had done something different with him compared to her horse. This prompted me to explain my approach, linking it to her experience when she encountered difficulties. When she heard my explanation, she understood why our methods had to differ. In simple terms, I was employing distinct strategies with each horse. Her horse would eventually reach the same level of understanding as mine, but it would take a bit more time. Once she grasped what I had managed to achieve, Alana asked, "What did you communicate to the eagles to have them cooperate with your intentions?" "A mutual respect, as equals of different types," I replied, both without fear of the other during our time together. I sensed that my words resonated with Alana as she fell silent for a few moments. I was unsure if I had upset her until she began to speak with a serious tone. "There's something I need to explain to you," Alana said, her voice tinged with concern. "I may have made a mistake by mentioning at school that you had grown up in China and Scotland. That shouldn't be an issue. Our society is quite diverse, and many people come from various multicultural backgrounds, so it may not be a problem at all," I responded, trying to ease her worries. "It's not like it was years ago when encountering someone with a different background was uncommon. How did it come up?" "We were changing after gym class, and a girl of Asian descent saw my ring. She was quite curious and approached me to ask about it. Looking back now, it felt more intense than what I would consider typical," Alana said. "I explained that it was my boyfriend's and that you had been raised in China and Scotland because your parents had been missionaries. When I questioned her about it, she said that her older cousin had worn one around her neck just like it for years. I told her that you had given it to me when we agreed to become exclusive. She asked if she could take a picture of it, and I allowed her to," Alana further explained. "I thought about it later and wondered if that might have been a mistake because the girl has an Asian heritage. I have been wondering if it had something to do with your history." "That's okay. There is most likely nothing to it. Besides, I don't think my father's ring is that unique," I replied. "The American authorities in China at that time were concerned about my history becoming public knowledge due to unanswered questions about what was going on. That is why I do not talk about it much. As far as I know, they could still be investigating." "You were just a child," Alana said. "Something or someone led the Chinese government to believe my parents were spies," I stated. "It led to their execution despite pressure from countries like ours. It has led me to think that the crackdown on the Christian faith was intended to hide the true agenda of the Chinese government," I explained. "If it became widely known who I am, those connected to the situation at that time might still see me as a threat to their authority. If what I have been told is true, some of those involved could be living here in this country today." Alana stopped and looked directly at me and said, "That may explain why I have not been able to find anything related to your name on the web. Am I right?" That was when I realized that it was time to share some secrets that may or may not be important. For me, I had to decide if I could trust her. She needed to understand my thoughts on certain matters for our relationship to grow. I remained silent for a few minutes, trying to decide what to do. Most of the games available on the web, through direct links or sites like Facebook, occasionally show Chinese symbols or words. Over time, coding can wear down if not regularly updated, which is why those blurbs keep appearing, I explained. Look at how often Microsoft updates Windows 10 as proof. They may accidentally reveal hidden programming due to excessive usage. The internet is a tool that the Chinese government uses effectively to control society in their own country. For example, they use it to track their own people's movements, I added. Through it, they can know where someone is at any moment. It is safe to say that, in a way, it is so bad that if they wanted to know with whom you spent time last night, they could determine it. Those with knowledge of how they manipulate things by using the internet have to ask themselves what they are doing on the web to try to affect or influence what is going on in our country and why, I said. What most in society don't comprehend is that the web is the greatest social engineering tool ever created and a great aid to those desiring to manipulate things. My adopted father, the master, said the effective way to beat the challenges posed by the Chinese government is not to engage in ways that give them an advantage, I said. Because of that, I don't fully trust anything found in or disclosed in the mass media, nor the social media, as it has become a playing field for those with an agenda. Blackstone was my mother's maiden name, I explained. The consulate in China changed my last name before they allowed me to leave China. I was sent to 5 different countries before arriving in Scotland, so it would be difficult for foreign governments to trace me. They did this to protect me because the Chinese government knew I had been found and was looking for me. I'm surprised that you didn't catch on because I only refer to my parents by their first names. My parents knew just enough of Bruce's story not to ask any further questions, Alana pointed out. They may have known about your parents' relationship with him, but not their full names. They most likely assumed it was the same as yours. It also explains why they found you acceptable enough for me to date. Until you came along, boys have been a closed-door sort of thing. I could date someone, but not on an ongoing basis. So, are you telling me that I am your first steady? I asked with a grin. Yes, and hopefully my last, Alana replied. Now continue with what you were saying. Those I know from that time period are very tight-lipped about everything, I said. The only thing your cousin Bruce ever said about that time was that my parents' problems started back here because of their own family. It leaves me with many questions that I think will begin to be answered when I find Lachey. We could do a web search for him, Alana suggested. Lachey is what I called him, I said. I have his real name written down as I remember it, but being so young, what I know is likely not accurate. It could also have been changed when he became a U.S. citizen, especially if the government thought there was a need to further protect him. Now I understand why you don't have a Facebook page, Alana said. You don't want to take the chance until your search for the truth is done. Do you still have your parents' legal names? Of course, I replied. They're listed on the copy that I have of my birth certificate. Why? Because I want to put their names into an ancestry site and research your family tree, Alana said. Perhaps that will give us a lead when we check what the web says about those still around. I will buy a new laptop for you to do it on, I said. Use a different name and address when setting it up. Be sure to only use it in public places with free Wi-Fi. Once you have all the information transferred to a stick, I will provide you with a program that will alter the laptop's IP address. After running the program, the laptop will be reset to factory settings, and you can give it to someone who needs it. Smart thinking, Alana said. I will do that during my spare classes at school. With 700 students attending, it would take a long time to track it down. How can they find something that will no longer exist? I asked. The new IP address eliminates any chance of it being discovered. Alana's face showed her surprise, so I added, that is just how easy it is to manipulate and use the internet for your own advantage. Anyone with a bit of knowledge can create many things that don't leave a trace back to their origin. Seriously, I would never have known any of this, Alana said. Internet security is talked about, but only for personal protection. It's never disclosed just how complex or risky the internet can be. Why isn't this discussed publicly? It is deliberately kept from the public eye because of the money it generates, I said. If the truth became widely known, think of how many jobs and businesses would be affected by the concerns of honest people. My adopted father always said it takes patience for the truth to come out, especially when society is working against itself, I said. Understand that some view the World Wide Web as a dangerous entity. I see it as a tool created by humans that can be used for good or ill. The truth, when it arrives, often catches people off guard and flips their understanding of reality. Together, we may find a way to influence its timeline. It still leaves the question of why my classmate was so interested in your ring, Alana said. I'm going to develop a deeper friendship with her. Perhaps as we grow closer, that will help me understand why. What's your instinct telling you? I asked. That something we think we know does not add up, Alana replied. Then keep your senses up. Watch and learn, I encouraged. Learn everything you can about the young lady who was asking questions. Bonnie and Ian Connor were observing their daughter and her boyfriend engaged in a serious discussion. Bonnie noticed their stillness and began to feel concerned until she saw them resume their affectionate interaction. Both Ian and Bonnie had to laugh because Dirk's horse was trying its best to get in their way when they tried to move around. Whatever the problem was, it looks like they got it sorted out, Ian said. Alana has lost her serious look and is now smiling. They're back to holding hands, Bonnie noted as she headed into the house. If it was important, I will hear about it later. Darling, if you remember back to us at their age, we too had our moments, Ian said. We had to navigate our feelings of awkwardness when communicating. I'm sure our expressions at that time were just as telling as theirs. Alana and I spent the day working with our horses. As a reward before we left them for the night, we brushed them down before feeding them a special treat. Toby was already wearing the saddle she would use. Even her father had been impressed with the progress she was making. Although he employed more traditional methods to train a horse, he could see the advantage in the way we approached it. He recognized that our method allowed the horse to acclimate gradually, preserving its natural spirit, a lifelong asset in his eyes. Toby and Alana were becoming quite close. The horse would do anything to watch over her. Even the hired staff had noticed this fact. Alana had a spirited discussion with one of the staff about her training approach. The staff member felt uneasy when the horse leaned over Alana's shoulder as if sensing the tension in the air. It was clear that Toby instinctively understood when something was troubling her. This sparked an understanding among both him and the staff member about their differing training philosophies. One approach aimed to create a utility horse, while the other sought to forge a lasting partnership. Before saying goodnight, Alana reminded me that the spring junior prom this year had a multicultural theme. Some of the dresses would showcase an Oriental influence. Hers would reflect the Chinese New Year in color and length, complete with an elegant hairstyle. I promised her that I would choose an outfit that properly complemented her attire. Unknown to her, my choice would connect me with my own cultural roots. Just before Alana went to bed, her mother asked her if we had a disagreement. Mom, I asked a question that led to a meaningful conversation about many things I needed to understand, Alana explained. I realized that it's important not to just accept things at face value. Then it was a good thing that you had that talk with Dirk, Bonnie said. It was definitely a learning experience in many ways, Alana replied. As a result of that serious conversation, I know for sure that Dirk has complete trust in me, as I do in him. To Bonnie, what her daughter revealed spoke volumes. It showed that their bond was deeper and stronger than most relationships at their age. Something was bringing these two together as they worked on a firm foundation that could become a lasting part of their lives. If what she sensed about these two proved true, it was not a matter of if, but when they would take the next steps in their relationship. The way she was feeling about it was puzzling because she had not felt this way about something since she was a child. Every one of my female staff checked with me to ensure that everything I had planned for the date aligned with what was expected for something as traditional as the junior prom. That was when I learned about its long history and significance. Based on their explanations, it was the night when seniors passed the torch of being a senior to the future graduating class. For most junior high girls, it would be their first major social event outside of important family gatherings. In the adult world, it signified a milestone, a way of saying, I am stepping into womanhood. I checked in with the office before heading to prepare, only to be met with a series of reminders about the do's and don'ts from the female staff. After handling the usual preparations, I dressed in a suit I had bought in New York, accompanied by several other pieces of clothing. The owner had been surprised that someone with my background would choose what I did. He was in awe as he measured the pieces for alterations. When I tried on the clothing after they had been fitted, I was extremely pleased with how I looked. While admiring the finished outfit in the mirror, I remarked to him in Chinese, "Gong zuo zuo de hen hao," meaning a job well done. In shock, he responded, "Ni zhen mei zi dao zhen mei shuo zhong wen," which means, "How do you know how to speak Chinese?" I replied, "Wo shi yu wo de ju ren jiao de," meaning I learned from my master. To this day, I remember the look on his face. I realized later that my words echoed back to the old Chinese culture. When I returned to the office to wait for the limo, everyone was impressed. One mother, whose daughter would be attending the prom, took one look at me and said, "Dirk, well done." I was wearing a midnight black Mandarin-style Italian-made suit with a soft pale purple shirt of the same style and leather shoes. I preferred this style compared to Western culture because I could leave the top 2 buttons of my shirt open. I disliked having anything against my throat. It had been my adopted father's favorite way to get me to listen, offering his wisdom in a rather imposing manner. "Dirk, few men can wear that style of suit and do it justice," Kathy, whose daughter was attending, remarked. "It suits you well. It gives off an impression of great taste and style. I hope your girlfriend appreciates the effort you made tonight." Alana warned me that the prom had a multicultural theme and that part of the decorations included Chinese-style lanterns, I replied. That's when I decided to wear this. When I saw the limo drive up, I went in and took the corsage box out of the staff fridge. As I left the building, some of the female staff wished me well. Ian was waiting by the door as I stepped out of the limo carrying the flower box. "Wow, you look fantastic, man," Ian said with a grin. "Is my daughter expecting this kind of reception?" "No, I told her I would be borrowing a friend's car," I said, and I had no idea what to expect until some of the female staff explained the event to me. I think she expects me to show up in blue jeans with a sports jacket. "Smart move. Sometimes it pays to listen to your elders," Ian replied. "Come on in. We'll let her know you're here." As I walked through the front door, I noticed Bonnie catching a few shots of me with her cell phone. She said in her Gaelic tongue, "Tatu prionsa I mesnab fair," meaning I was a standout among men. Her words helped me relax significantly. Bonnie noticed the change in my demeanor and laughed. "Dirk, it gets easier from here since you've passed the all-important parental approval." Ian retrieved the bottle of scotch I'd given him. "We have time for a drink before our daughter comes down." "No, I better not," I replied. "I'll be at a dance filled with minors. It's best if I avoid it. I wouldn't want to be turned away at the door." "You just reminded me of my first prom," Ian said. "Things were much cheaper back then, and parents were stricter." "Were you incredibly nervous?" I asked. "Most likely more than I remember," Ian admitted as Bonnie began climbing the stairs. "Once I got into it, I found myself enjoying it, but I still feel it wasn't worth the money spent." "We could say that about anything we invest our hard-earned money in," I replied. "But who am I to complain? I make my living off of what people throw away." "Is it a lot of garbage?" Ian inquired. "We're burying and leveling off half the remnants of 90,000 tons a day, compressed like a car that's been crushed. We soak each section down with a layer of contaminated water before covering it up with topsoil," I explained. "By the time we get it, almost all recyclables have been removed." "So that is why the shrinkage in size by the time the cycle is done is so great," Ian said. "Now things are beginning to make more sense to me. What you have left is completely compostable. What you end up with is clean topsoil that could be sold as top line back where the garbage was created. You could market it as organic made soil and sell it for a premium in 2-pound bags. The problem is that the mass and concentration of the compressed garbage means it will take additional time before it starts settling and shrinking, even with our efforts to accelerate it," I explained. "As we add another layer on top of what we have already done, the additional weight will help compress it more." That was when Ian and I saw his only daughter descending from the upper floor. The red, full-length dress she wore was elegant and graceful. It flowed beautifully, accentuating her figure while keeping her poised. Her hair was styled neatly, and she wore light makeup that accentuated her features. She looked radiant and confident. It was evident that her outfit paid homage to traditional Chinese formal attire. After tonight, there would be no doubt of her elegance and capability in any situation. I heard Ian quietly say, "My little girl has grown up. She is truly a beautiful woman in every way. I have dreaded seeing her like this since the day she was born." I couldn't have agreed more. She exuded a charm and maturity that was striking. I felt fortunate to be by her side. Alana seemed pleased to see me in a suit and expressed her admiration. She asked me to turn around so she could see me from all angles. I chuckled softly, knowing it was the first time she had seen me dressed up. "Dirk, every person seeing you tonight is going to be impressed because of how sharp you look," Alana said. "I was hoping you would dress up, but you definitely went the extra mile with that suit." I laughed and replied, "It's a good thing I did because being with you will make me stand out. Without this, everyone would be wondering why such a wonderful person would be with someone like me. You look stunning." Alana was happy that I had brought her 2 corsages, one for her shoulder and one for her right wrist. While I pinned one on her, her mother captured the moment for her video album. The white rose flowers stood out against her red dress, creating a lovely contrast. Both my date and I could see the excitement that her parents had for us as a couple. After saying goodbye to her parents, I escorted her to the limo, another surprise for her. We were heading to the best restaurant in the area for a special dinner for 2. The drive would take about an hour. As we traveled, I considered how long a bus ride she had each day just to attend school. After climbing in, the limo driver set off while her parents watched from the door. "Did you notice that Mom had tears in her eyes?" Alana asked. "I guess seeing us dressed up for a formal night stirred her emotions." "It got to your dad, too," I replied. "He seemed a bit emotional as we both watched you come down the stairs." "I was ready when you pulled up," Alana said. "Mom made me promise to wait for her before coming down as if it were a big deal." "You're viewing it from your perspective," I explained. "To them, it was special. Your dad even remarked, 'My little girl has grown up. She's a lovely woman in every way.' You do that all the time," Alana commented. "Do what?" I asked. "See things from all sides," she replied. "Remember the story about the leaf?" I asked, knowing she would. "A true follower of Zen strives throughout their life to be as serene as a leaf in comparison to all others." Alana looked at me in surprise, then said, "I just realized that in a different world, you would have made a fantastic teacher." The restaurant was bustling that night, likely because many attending prom had the same idea. Surprisingly, we were the only couple arriving in a limo. We had to wait for our table, which was unusual. The hostess apologized for not accommodating the volume better. Neither Alana nor I realized how well we complemented each other as a couple until we were led to our seats. As we followed the hostess, we noticed others in the restaurant glancing our way. When we reached our table, there was a small bottle of non-alcoholic wine with an envelope addressed to us both. Once seated across from each other, Alana opened the envelope. The note inside read, "Enjoy the night and make it your own. Share each moment with the knowledge that for the 2 of you, there will never be another night like this." It was signed by her parents. We started with a sample dish from the restaurant, giving us a chance to try a few different options. Alana particularly enjoyed the stuffed crab on mushroom caps, while I found the sweet and sour frog legs to be delightful. For our main dishes, we quickly made our choices. I ordered French onion soup, while Alana opted for a house salad with a wine vinaigrette. For my main course, I had a medium-rare prime steak with mushrooms and blue cheese roasted red potatoes. For her main dish, Alana chose duck breast with a pomegranate citrus glaze served over a bed of spinach with a few wedges of fresh-cut lemon on the side. She remarked that it was delicious. I was a bit concerned that she might find it too rich. We both decided to skip dessert since we were quite full. Of course, we had to taste each other's preferred main dishes. What we didn't realize was that we had drawn the attention of many couples dining nearby. It seemed that our adventure of setting the eagle free had made us a couple to watch. While paying for our meal, the waitress returned with the receipt and commented that she had recorded the 1-hour program about us releasing the eagles and had replayed it several times. It was quite something having the female eagle looking directly into my eyes, Alana responded to the waitress's remark. Thankfully, I knew from experience how Dirk was able to connect with wildlife, which helped me through that unique adventure. Was the female reporter telling the truth when she said it was your first official date? The waitress inquired. It was the third time Dirk and I had been together, and yes, it was our first actual date, Alana replied. This is now our second. Does he have a brother? Our server asked. Nope. When they created me, they broke the mold, I added with a smile. The waitress smiled shyly and then excused herself to attend to other diners. Alana looked at me with a smile and said, If you were any other man, I might worry about being abandoned all night. After signing the ticket and leaving a tip, Alana and I returned to the limo to head to the prom. I was impressed with how the high school had arranged for the evening. The school's cafeteria served as a multifunctional room that included a stage. Most of the tables and chairs had been stored under the stage, leaving the remaining chairs aligned by the walls for seating. I learned that the back of the 3 classrooms could be opened up for extra seating. Though we weren't the first to arrive, we became the center of attention as soon as we entered the area designated for dancing. I was delighted to see that they had a live band. Everyone seemed eager to discuss our adventure and hear our thoughts. Alana's face glowed with pride each time someone complimented us on how well we were dressed. When asked if we had coordinated our outfits beforehand, Alana said, Of course, my boyfriend and I discuss everything. It was about halfway through the evening that we both discovered our shared love of dance. I was quite proficient at the traditional dances, but I felt a bit awkward with the newer styles. It did not help that I was not familiar with any of it, not even the music. Alana got a real blast out of trying to teach me the so-called modern moves. Jokingly, she said, You're so old-souled that in some ways you are older than dirt. It was just before the start of the band's second set when the master of ceremonies, a female teacher, spoke. In China, the peacock dance is performed quite often. The dance, when performed, is considered a wish for good luck to those who dance and for those who observe the performance. According to Chinese culture, the dancers, in fact, are receiving good wishes for a life of happiness, she said. I was going to perform it for those becoming seniors next year, but my husband got called away because of an emergency. Seeing the disappointment of some in attendance and without giving it much thought, I got out of my seat and walked up to the stage, getting her attention. She leaned down, and I spoke in what I thought might be her native tongue. Seong min tung ngo tujek muma, I whispered to her in Cantonese, which meant, Would you like to dance with me? Shi de wo hui, she replied, which means, Yes, I would. Colin, put the music on, the lady said. She came down off the stage, offering me her hand. Together we walked to the center of the floor. Most of the Chinese ritual dances tell a story. Each dancer has a role to play, and movements are meant to be timed with the movement of the partner. Together, we put on our facial masks. Everyone watched us as we went through each moment as if we had rehearsed for hours. When we were finished, we received a heartfelt ovation. You have danced this dance before, the master of ceremonies whispered while we took our bows. Your movement in time with mine proves it. You must have been skilled in the dance from a young age. Perhaps in time, you will tell me how you came to learn it. Afterward, we each went our own way. I noticed a couple of the ladies who were seated with us talking earnestly with my girlfriend, Alana. When I returned to her, she had a look of pride and joy in her eyes that I had not seen before. It was amazing, Alana softly said. The beauty and grace in that dance conveyed so much without a word. Those who understand the history behind the dance appreciate it even more, I explained. It is seen as a blessing to those present to witness it for years to come. There are still many layers I need to learn about you, my dear future husband, Alana said. The more I see of you, the more I learn there is to understand. I think we should get some lessons in formal dancing. With that, we shared a moment of understanding before returning to the dance floor where we spent the rest of our time. Just before the end of the band's second set, we returned to our seats. We paused as we saw the master of ceremonies approaching our table. Walking with her were 2 other females, both of Oriental descent. Dirk, the youngest of the 3 girls coming towards us, was the one that captured the image of your ring, Alana said, which is still around my neck. It's the middle one that I'm paying attention to the most, I whispered. She resembles my childhood friend's mother. I saw her a few times when I was dressed up, all wearing masks when we were out in costume celebrating a holiday. Her first name was Suling. She had to leave China because her father was expelled after serving part of his sentence. The authorities had deemed him unretainable. I won't know for sure if it's Suling until I hear her voice. I took my right hand and joined it with Alana's. She could sense my feelings and emotional excitement and whispered, "Slow down your breathing. It will help ease what you're experiencing." I had to smile because what she was telling me echoed my master's advice during my training. Remaining calm and at peace helps wear down your opponent. Half of the battle against an enemy is getting them to expend their energy quickly. Once that happens, they become easier to handle. Together, we stood as the band announced their next break, and the three ladies approached our table. "Alana, I was wondering if you would mind showing my older cousin the ring you wear around your neck," Alana's school chum named Fen asked. Alana looked at me, and I nodded my head. She released my hand and brought out her silver Celtic cross and my ring. Both Alana and I could see tears in the eyes of the middle one as she asked Alana in English, "How did you come into possession of Wu Ming's ring? I know it was his because I wore it around my neck as I grew up. I returned it to him the night before we left China for good." Alana grasped my hand tightly as I spoke in Cantonese. "Little sister, you have certainly blossomed into a beautiful adult just as I said you would." Fen's face went completely white. It was clear that until this moment she had no idea why the ring was so significant. "Fen, what did my boyfriend say?" Alana asked. Fen explained, and Suling ran around the table to embrace me tightly. Nobody could help but notice the moment. Through her tears, she said in English, "You promised me, my brother, on the day we parted that you would find a way out. I knew you would. You have always kept your word." I simply held her until her tears, caused by many emotions, had subsided. We invited them to join our table. The two cousins sat down, and the master of ceremonies excused herself, saying she had duties to attend to. Alana and I could see that Suling and Fen were still grappling with the reality of my presence in Suling's life again. Suling's face glowed with joy and excitement, like she was a 4-year-old opening a Christmas present. When I showed Suling the picture of the ring, she said she had to find out for sure. That was when I decided she would be my companion for the night, Fen said. I asked her if she would know if it was you. "From his voice," she replied, since I had never seen his face. "When we saw you do the peacock dance, we both got very excited." It was then that Alana learned from Fen that Suling and I had supported each other through the challenging times in our lives. Fen did not even know who I was until tonight. Learning that explained a lot, and she agreed to explain it to Alana at school when she could. "Alana, the way these two met and developed a bond," Fen said, "was so discreet that we all thought your boyfriend was just an imaginary friend Suling had made up." "Alana, I hope we can become friends," Suling said. "I will always cherish your boyfriend as the brother he is to me because of our shared experiences. It was his ability to listen that helped me work things out. To this day, I still don't quite understand how he guided me to discover solutions without imposing his opinions." "Suling, has Dirk always been able to see a situation from all sides?" Alana asked. It was interesting to watch Suling as she pondered my girlfriend's question. "Your question caught me off guard," Suling replied. "Now that I think back, he was showing me what could happen and what the outcomes of different situations might be. He was teaching me in his own way how to be prepared for anything. I see now how he helped me grow stronger." Alana took my hand and replied, "I know that Dirk and you share a lifelong connection shaped by experiences that have influenced both of you. I trust him completely. Just so you know, I see him as my future husband, so if you can accept that, we will have no issues." With that, the three girls exchanged contact information, including adding their photos to their phone numbers in their cell phones. For the rest of the evening, I had 3 wonderful companions to dance with. Each would remember this prom as a life-changing moment. For Alana, the rest of the night became a time of discovery as she learned about Suling's and my upbringing. None of us realized that night how significant these newly formed friendships would become. Even so, before we parted for the night, we all agreed that for now it was best to keep our relationships private. While walking back to her parents' place, Alana mentioned that perhaps we were beginning to peel away the layers of misunderstandings about my family. This prompted me to share more about my life experiences. Alana concluded that it felt a bit like being in the military, but with even more restrictions. Her parents were still waiting for us when we returned. We lingered at the front door, causing the porch light to flicker, a clear signal that it was time to end the evening. After she closed the door, I headed back to the limo for my ride home. Bonnie had been eagerly awaiting Alana's return and had grown a bit impatient, hence the flickering light. Once Alana came inside, Bonnie could tell her daughter was excited, knowing they'd be up late discussing the evening. Bonnie realized she would need to keep a closer eye on Alana and Dirks's relationship, as it seemed to be evolving in ways they might not yet recognize. Looking back on her own early experiences, Bonnie recalled how difficult it was for her and Ian to navigate their feelings, often leading to a lot of late-night conversations and uncertainty. They had been emotionally overwhelmed at the time, struggling with the implications of a growing relationship. Bonnie had been concerned about potential consequences that could arise from such closeness, prompting her to take preventive measures to ensure Alana had the necessary resources should she find herself in a similar situation. It had been a couple of months since the prom, which remained a popular topic in our small community. The local newspaper had featured images from the event, highlighting the master of ceremonies and me performing the peacock dance. A reporter dedicated 2 pages to discussing how the prom epitomized small-town values, emphasizing the importance of respect and compassion in contrast to the issues faced in larger cities. It was clear that those attending the prom sought to celebrate the diverse cultural backgrounds of their peers. The writer reflected on how witnessing 2 different cultures participating in a traditional ritual dance beautifully illustrated the potential for harmony within our society through mutual acceptance and understanding. The reporter concluded that society must learn to release ingrained prejudices to walk with the understanding and insight gained from the experience of chaperoning the junior prom. I now owned the mineral rights to the land I had leased. A geological team, representing a company interested in evaluating the site, assessed the quality of the iron ore in the mountainous area, noting its remarkable density. It took about a month to finalize an agreement. They planned to excavate from one end of the mountain to the other, creating a vast area while ensuring that crucial mineral concentrations were effectively managed. The extracted rock would be processed on-site for transportation, utilizing containers previously used for waste. The railroad company was pleased to facilitate shipments in both directions. They purchased the rock at a stipulated price based on tonnage and agreed to cover the costs for preparing the tunnel's interior once construction was finished. I viewed this as an efficient method to achieve the tunnel I envisioned, with operations running continuously, necessitating thorough planning. Standard fees would be paid for handling any excess materials. Unusable remnants would be directed to a recycling area. As excavation progressed, we used large rock fragments to shape the new stream and create ponds for the waterfalls. The realization of how much effort and time they would save us became evident as we delved into the project. We employed cranes and flatbed trucks to transport the significant pieces of rock, which involved considerable effort. David compared it to creating a jigsaw puzzle without the reference image. I noticed his sense of pride growing as we moved closer to completing this short-term objective. The stream was designed to be approximately 6 feet wide and about 18 to 24 inches deep, aiming for a natural appearance. We agreed to incorporate various sizes of crushed rock as a foundational layer, adding finely crushed sandstone that would adapt to the flow of water and to top it with fresh soil sloping gently toward the creek. We understood that by organizing the materials this way, we would allow nature to gradually reclaim the area, transforming it into a more natural creek over time. Within a couple of years, the area would have muddy spots caused by natural erosion and leaves falling. We had no clue how much raw material we would need to complete the creek, but thankfully the route chosen for the creek to flow due to geography was toward the same upper area where the concrete road was being constructed. David had discovered by accident that we could connect our creek to an existing small stream, which meant we were contributing to the natural ecology of the area rather than creating a new environment. This provided additional evidence that we were restoring what previous people had altered. Alana suggested we plant trees and create a nature walking path down both sides. This way, visitors would have a visual aid representing our long-term goals. Little did we realize how many evenings Alana and I would spend searching for the plants to include. Both David and I admitted that her suggestion was brilliant. David, our site engineer, loved the idea so much that he proposed adding another small pond. Alana expressed that it should be deep enough for swimming, so that was what we were in the midst of doing. On many Sundays, Alana and I often found ourselves riding our horses around the site. These rides felt like all-day adventures. One of our sweetest memories was observing the cycle of life with the eagles. I do not know which of us was more excited when we learned there were young eaglets beginning to learn how to fly. When we first saw them, we both felt emotional, believing that the day we released them marked the beginning of our relationship. Like the eagles, we were growing closer. By this time, the fill had been leveled off, creating a small plateau that overlooked the valley. The concrete driveway and the base of the cavern had been laid, with the steel beams ready to be cemented and bolted in. By the end of summer, I hoped to move into it. We were currently on the new plateau overlooking the full valley below. It was refreshing to see patches of green that weren't there before. Progress on the new road around the site was slow but steady, adding a touch of cleanliness that hadn't existed previously. From this viewpoint, we realized that we needed to focus on the small area we were creating between the stream and the concrete road. "It's about a 15-minute drive from the highway," Alana said. "Perhaps we should turn that small area into a community park. It would be a good spot for those wanting to observe the eagles." "It would need a washroom, parking area, and a few picnic tables," I added. "Plus, it would allow visitors the perfect spot to safely observe what we are actually doing here until the trees and shrubs grew." "If we decide to go ahead with it," Alana noted, "you would need a way to securely close it down at night to prevent any misuse." "To implement that, we would have to have signage indicating that fact," I said. "We will need to establish a name and set hours." "It should be designed in a way that complements what you're doing," Alana said. "The terrain and fauna should be natural to the area." With our discussion complete, we headed back to her parents' place for Sunday dinner. It was the Friday of the Labor Day weekend. Everyone was looking forward to the long weekend. The governor was flying out to officially inaugurate the hydroelectric generating plant, even though it had already been operating for 2 weeks. The transporting lines had been connected and were actively transferring the generated electricity, proving to be a beneficial project for the state. With the volume of water coming down, it took a week for it to make its way to the natural creek that David had discovered. David and I found it amusing that staff could be seen filling water jugs to take home. The state, the county, and my limited liability company had reached an agreement regarding the distribution of the costs for water, sewage, and electricity. The state and the county shared the costs, resulting in significant savings for my house, which was now complete and connected to county services. The same news crew that had accompanied the governor last time was returning for a follow-up. Alana and I, after spending considerable time in the valley riding our horses, decided I needed a barn and a corral. With her father, Ian's assistance, we designed it to feature 2 floors, 8 stalls, and a common area for future use. It was set back from the backside of the house while facing it, with the corral on the side. Ian sold me the straw and hay I needed at market value, and the horse feed was shipped in once a month. From the edge of the small plateau, you could clearly see the newly completed small park. With the water flow coming down and meandering through the area, the natural wildlife was becoming more vibrant. Alana and I took great pride in that fact, as it gave us a sense of satisfaction in believing it was a sign of nature's blessing. We had built a washroom building, parking for 10 cars, and placed 6 picnic tables throughout the area. Every morning, a pumper tank would empty the sewage from the washroom holding tanks and spread it in the recycling area. Ian and Bonnie, during their tour of my house, saw the finished product and fell in love with it. Both had been amazed because most of the house was not visible even as they drove up. They also thought the small park we had created looked like a Scottish moor. After viewing the pond and falls from the patio, they made me promise to let them use it because they saw it as a very appealing spot. We had used the native flora and fauna to landscape the area. Thus, when going for a swim, You could see a lot of ferns and small shrubs, which provided a sense of seclusion. From the road below, you would not believe there was a pond because it looked so natural. It was clear to see the pride Alana had for what we had put together. She told the reporters that we had worked together on the weekends to complete the landscaping. We saw the helicopter fly over the electrical plant and waited for them to come to us after the ribbon cutting. About half an hour later, they did. The governor and I stood back as Alana was interviewed by the lady reporter who had spoken with us the first time. Alana explained everything in detail that had been accomplished since their last visit. The female reporter captured it all as Alana shared some of our short-term goals going forward. "I think your partner loves what you're doing here more than you do," the governor said. "I guess there's going to be another TV special on this. This time I will make sure my staff is prepared for it." "It was her idea to establish the park and the pathway along both sides of the creek," I said. "That way, it would be an ideal spot for visitors to come and observe the growing eagle population that now calls this area home." "How long did it take to put it all together?" the governor asked. "Once we found the existing small water creek, it took less than 6 weeks to design the layout so that the new creek section flows into the old creek. We had trucks moving rock and soil 7 days a week," I explained. "Our challenge was moving enough soil to be able to plant the trees, shrubs, and wildflowers that we selectively dug up from other areas to transplant here. We saw what we were doing as adding to what Mother Nature had already created," I said. "Thus, we can say that we were just restoring what may have been taken away. This small plateau that I have built on did not exist a year ago," I said. "Even the topsoil, which is covered in clover, comes from the recycling we have done. Thanks to the conditions in this valley, we have been able to accelerate the decomposition of the material to a period of 6 months. I have to give full credit to the city of New York for that because most of what we receive is completely recyclable." With that, we walked out to the edge of the plateau so he could see for himself the changes we had made. He apparently must have been impressed because when he talked about the achievements he had seen, he made the point to mention to her that I had to be very driven to have accomplished so much in such a little time. Alana and I smiled when the governor added, "If only as a society we could see the beauty in restoring what we have taken away from Mother Nature as this young couple does. Imagine what a world we could have. Of all the programs I have approved since becoming governor, this is the one I'm most proud of." When the camera was off, we took our guests on a tour of the house, which was yet to be decorated or furnished. They were impressed by the fact that the small-appearing tiny house was so spacious. The female reporter asked Alana, "What's your long-term plan for this?" "We knew when we met that we would be building our forever home right here in the valley because we were both drawn to it," Alana replied. "Dirk, when he discovered this cavern, knew he wanted to use the space to build into. It is designed for low maintenance and to pay respect to what had been already created. Everything we do is done to restore the balance others have taken from Mother Nature," Alana said. "When we are done, this will be ours to enjoy as we grow old together. This house, which will be our home, was designed to blend in with its environment and not compete with it. Inside, it's a modern home. Outside, it feels as if it's part of the mountain and always has been." "You're both so different in your approach to life," the reporter said. "I find it hard to personally comprehend." "My mother says that Dirk and I are old-souled," Alana explained. "It has allowed us to have respect for all living things created by God. In our eyes, they are as important as we are." "How long have you known he was the one for you?" the reporter asked. "After being thrown by the horse," Alana said. "I awoke to find him helping me recover. During that time, he kept me calm and at ease. When the doctors told me that Dirk had saved my life, I knew he would always be there for me. The more I got to know him, the more I understood that he was old-souled like me. From that day, I have believed that God brought him to me." While watching them take off to journey back to the capital, Alana's cell phone began ringing. It was Fen. Suling, her cousin, was in trouble and needed our help. It was serious. Fen's older brother, who thought he owned Suling, was on his way to bring her back to where he believed she belonged. He had decided he was going to force his first cousin to comply with his demands. We hurried down to my trailer by the old mine's office, where I quickly changed clothes. When I came out dressed in the same outfit I had worn for the prom, Alana knew that I meant business. As we drove to her parents' place, I had her call for a helicopter to pick us up there. The helicopter was just landing when we came out of her parents' house after she had changed her clothes. Her choice in clothing complemented mine, and within half an hour by air, we arrived in Richmond. According to Fenn's text message, we were about half an hour ahead of her older brother. We knew that Fenn was still trying to convince him that he did not own Suling, but he was resistant to that idea. Suling was helping out at her uncle's restaurant for the long weekend before resuming her teaching position at the elementary school. After calling for a taxi, we arrived at the restaurant's front door just as Fenn and her brother arrived at the back entrance of their father's business. We walked in and headed to the kitchen area. A Chinese girl said in Chinese, "Ni bu neng jin ku," which means you can't go in there. I responded with, "Ni shuo wo hui ku wo xiang ku de di fang ma," which translates to, "I will go where I want." With that, I went through the door separating the kitchen from the serving area to witness Fenn's brother trying to lead Suling out the door. He had literally lifted her off the floor and was carrying her. "Let Suling go now," I said in English with a firm tone. "Your control over my little sister ends today." Everyone paused in the busy kitchen, noticing my loud voice. I became the center of attention alongside Fenn's brother. "Who are you, and why should I listen to you?" he replied arrogantly. He seemed to reconsider when he saw the look on my face and ultimately decided to put Suling down. Alana later mentioned that I had an intimidating presence in that moment. As soon as he released her, she rushed towards me. With everyone watching, I walked over to a 3-foot Buddha statue against the wall. Without a word, I bowed my head, closed my eyes, and took a moment of focus while holding my hands as if in prayer. "He's my brother. He was the one who gave me strength when I needed to endure your actions," Suling said to her cousin in Chinese, speaking with determination. "He is the one you will have to answer to for your conduct towards me from now on." I opened my eyes as Suling finished speaking. Placing my right hand on the statue's head, I noticed someone started laughing, treating the moment lightly. The laughter died down when, moments later, the statue crumbled to the floor. "Imagine for a minute," I said in English with a very firm voice, "if I can do what I did to that stone carving, think about what I will do to anyone who disrespects Suling again." The silence in the room was palpable. There now was no doubt that I meant business, and that I felt that I could easily back my words up. "This is my brother Dirk Blackstone," Suling said proudly. "We spent many of our nights as children sitting together on the steps of the temple. He was and is the Wooming." Fenn's brother, after hearing Suling's words, showed real fear. I said to him directly, "Disrespect my little sister or me in any way, and you and I will meet privately. Suling is my most trusted one and always will be." Everybody's face showed instant respect. I now knew that until today none had believed I had existed. To most present back then, I had just been Suling's invisible friend. Suling walked over to stand beside me, her face showing great relief, pride, and joy. Just as an older man came in carrying a huge tray of dishes that he had cleared off some of the tables. Alana saw the surprised look on my face. Alana saw who I was looking at and mouthed, "Lâché." Without saying a word, the older gentleman placed the tray on the rinsing sink's counter and started organizing them for washing as if he was doing a low-end job. I noticed that the rest in the kitchen had paid no attention to him because in their eyes that was how unimportant he was. Fenn whispered after noticing me watching the man, "That is my father's older brother. He has had a hard life and in many ways is a broken man." Alana, seeing the tears forming in my eyes, mouthed, "What's wrong?" Without saying a word, I walked up behind him and got down on one knee and said in a gentle voice, "Lâché, can I have a treat?" Everyone could see the tears forming in his eyes, but he said nothing and kept on working. So I quietly asked again. I could see by his reaction he was trying not to believe what he was hearing, so I spoke for the third time. "Grandfather, can I have a treat?" The older man spoke in broken English with the emotion he was trying to hold in. "Why should I believe what I am hearing? How do I know that my mind is not deceiving me? Can you prove who you are?" I smiled. I knew that only two people would know how I could prove to him who I was. That was the ultimate question. For him, he had to see it to believe this was real. "I can show you my secret mark," I replied. "Can you show me yours?" As he turned to me, I stood up and removed my jacket. I shared my shirt's hem before taking it off. I handed them to Alana to hold. Lachey and I both turned our right shoulders to each other. Each of us showed our matching tattooed dark blue roses. For both of us, the tears let go. "Grandfather," I said. "Dirk, you're alive," my Chinese grandfather said. "I couldn't go back to the temple to find out about you once they released me because I knew that was what the authorities wanted me to do. Sadly, I had no choice but to leave you behind." "Father was keeping Dirk's location secret. Is that why you were sent to the work camps for so long?" Suling asked. "If it was not for your father, whom I was taught by my parents to call grandfather," I replied, "there is a good chance that I would not be here today. After the authorities took my mother, he took me to the temple because they were coming after him and his wife. Suling, will you please help me remove the leather band that carries the cross I wear around my neck?" I knelt as she carefully cut the strap. It took her a few moments because it was quite firm. Once free, I handed the cross back to the man who had given it to me for safekeeping all those years ago. "Grandfather, you told me it contained a secret," I said. "I returned the cross you asked me to protect intact." With that done, I stood back up and proceeded to put my shirt back on. Alana and Suling came to my side, taking my hands in theirs to show their unconditional support. Lachey, the man I had always called grandfather, displayed a newfound strength and pride that seemed to change his demeanor. Everyone witnessing what had just transpired knew their perception of the situation had shifted. Suling's father turned to his younger brother and said, "You blamed me for losing the family's wealth, called me a fool, and treated me as less than for years because I kept my word to those I walked with. Inside this cross are the industrial diamonds I bought, aware that I was soon to be arrested. Today they are worth about $5 million in the open market." With that said, he slammed the wooden cross onto the stainless steel table, shattering it. Inside was a silver cross. "Someone please fetch me one of those little pillboxes from the cashier counter," my grandfather said with authority. When he was handed the pillbox, my grandfather pressed the top 3 edges of the silver cross, causing it to open. On top of a thin layer of translucent paper lay a microchip. He carefully lifted the paper and the chip and placed them into the little pillbox. "Your father and mother knew the authorities were coming for us all and that it was too late for them to escape," my grandfather explained. "Why and who was behind it can be found within the data the chip contains. Our issues all started here in the States. When you find a way to access it, the questions you have may be answered." Beneath the translucent paper were the diamonds he had mentioned, along with 12 larger diamonds with a blue tinge to them. He also placed these carefully into the pillbox before handing it to me. "We knew the authorities would seize any assets we had, so we began converting everything we could," Lachey explained. "The blue-tinged diamonds are what your parents converted their Chinese assets into." Lachey turned to his younger brother and said, "Get busy. Prepare the best meal for my daughter, my niece, my grandson, his girlfriend, and me that you have ever served. When my family has left, my dear brother, we will sit down and have a long overdue talk. Remember, anyone who disrespects my grandfather disrespects me," I said firmly, while looking directly at Fen's brother. "From this day forward, Suling is my concierge and will shortly be involved with all the business in my life," I stated. "Fen will be my future wife's concierge. I expect all to treat them accordingly from this day forward." I noticed the tears forming in Alana's eyes. Although I had not explicitly told her that I loved her, my conduct and words conveyed it. She had just received the confirmation of what she always believed. "I was the Wuming's parents' concierge while they were alive," Lachey said, "one of the legal guardians of their son. I am honored and blessed by who he has picked to be their advisors. I am just as honored as I was to be asked to be his parents. May my daughter and my niece be the calm and strength that will be needed as they serve out their new roles well." Alana's eyes glistened with emotion as she squeezed my hand tight. I knew she was trying her best to hold back her feelings. Together, the 5 of us went from the kitchen to a table where we could enjoy some privacy. Once we were seated and our beverages ordered, the celebration began. My grandfather's brother prepared a feast that was exceptional. It was a pleasure to see him humble himself. It provided us with a chance to bond as he shared stories about my parents' lives and their ministry work in China. I was grateful for the day's events, as I left with a new understanding of many aspects of my early life. As we were saying our goodbyes, Suling whispered in my ear, "Dad's pride in himself as a man has returned by knowing you are alive and thriving. It proved to him that he had made the right choices all along. My mother and my siblings will be thrilled to see our father restored." "If your cousin bothers you again," I said to her, "call me, and I will address it in a way that ensures he understands the importance of respecting boundaries. The best thing he can do is accept his new reality by moving forward and leaving the past in the past." The helicopter had just dropped us off at Alan's parents' place. For both Alana and me, it had been an emotional day. We stood watching it ascend back into the air. "We need to go and unwind before we go into the house," Alana said, "or be prepared to answer a lot of questions since they can apparently read us like a book. We need time to adjust to what happened." "Shall we head to the restaurant where we went on prom night?" I suggested. "Then afterward, we will go watch the nighttime dance caused by the burning of the excess gas." "Why not? We are definitely dressed for a dinner date," Alana said. As we were walking towards my truck, Alana's mother stuck her head out the door and said, "Where do you two think you're going? Dinner's just about ready." Alana looked at me and whispered, "We will be right in. We just want to chat privately for a few moments." Before her mother could close the door, Alana leaned in closer to me. The intensity of our interaction made me reflect on what Ian had told me I was experiencing the emotions he had warned me about. I eventually broke the moment and asked, "Can we go looking for furniture tomorrow since I would like to be in the new home as soon as possible?" "We can," Alana said. "The question I have is, when do I get my engagement ring?" "Around the time that you celebrate your 18th birthday," I replied. If I thought her reactions were passionate before I said that, they truly intensified afterward. I was grateful that we were in public because, if we had been alone, we might not have stopped. Ian was coming out of the barn heading towards the house when he saw us standing close together. Using his dry humor, he called out, "Cool it, you two! She's not your brooding mare yet." We stepped apart. Alana looked a bit embarrassed and headed into the house without saying a word. Ian walked over and stood beside me as I collected myself. "Back in the day, my granddad would say she was more than ready to start a family," he said. "What I want to know is, what did you say that sparked her enthusiasm in such a passionate way?" "Two things," I replied. "I asked her if she wanted to help me pick furniture out tomorrow and that she would get her engagement ring near her 18th birthday. My mother was 16 when she married my dad," Ian said. "Together they had 8 children. I hope you're prepared for a large family. My mom always has a sparkle in her eyes when she looks at my father. I see that same reaction when Alana looks at you." "You gotta stop going on helicopter rides together," Ian noted in his dry humor. "Every time you go on one, your relationship gets a boost." "Well, to be honest, it's been an exciting day in a lot of ways," I said. "A door has been opened that might lead me toward the truths behind what happened to my parents." Ian paused as if he was trying to gather his thoughts, then said, "Before drawing any conclusions, weigh out what's coming out, from where, and by whom. Be sure of the character of the persons behind what is being claimed or explained before deciding what you can or cannot accept." With that over, we headed into the house, the birth of a rose in bloom. It had been well after midnight before Alana's parents had allowed me to go home. Each of them had asked many questions about us as a couple. Alana and I politely navigated their inquiries without revealing too much, not because we did not want them to know everything, but because for now the timing was not right. We did not want to overwhelm them with too much information. We shared a bit about our meeting Fen and Suling at the spring prom, but chose not to disclose their history or how they related to me. I explained that they and I had grown up in the same village, so part of that evening had been a stroll down memory lane for me and a learning experience for Alana. Alana expressed that the experience had given her a better understanding of my formative years. This allowed her to appreciate what shaped me into the person I was today. Fen and Suling are cousins who have become my friends. I explained that their daughter and I had gone to help them out of a challenging situation, and we were hoping our efforts today would have a positive impact. As with any human behavior, we could not be sure how people would respond once they processed the initial shock of the circumstances. Ian, excited by the realization that Alana and I were indeed a couple, felt compelled to share what I had said to him with Bonnie. He described the emotional state he had seen us in, much to my surprise, as he walked out of the barn. Bonnie responded with an expression that conveyed she had anticipated the situation, leaving Ian momentarily speechless. I was worried for years that when Alana became of age, she would have difficulty finding a partner she could relate to because of her old-world upbringing, Bonnie said. That first day she met Dirk, I noticed a change in that fear, but I couldn't fully understand why. The more I learned about him, the more I realized he shared similar values and perspectives with our daughter, perhaps even more so. I noticed it too, Ian added. It had been a long time since I'd seen her so enthusiastic about anything. I was initially concerned when she wanted to speak to someone we didn't know in private at the hospital. That wasn't like the daughter I knew. Before that, she had been quieter and more reserved, observing rather than engaging with the world. It was a shock to see her being so open and bold, especially with someone she had just met. Dad, by then I understood where my relationship with my future husband was heading, Alana explained. I had spent the day with Dirk and witnessed a gentleness in him that, while not always visible, is reflected in everything he does. I had questions that needed answers because of his behavior with me. The way he expressed his thoughts about our relationship and his straightforwardness provided me with invaluable insights. I concluded that my feeling of a deep connection with him was justified, Alana continued. From that point on, it was simply a matter of allowing time to confirm what I already knew would be. It seems meeting Dirk gave Alana a confidence she didn't have before. She began to open up to him in ways I never thought possible. At that point, she decided to embrace life more fully, Bonnie added. The experience they shared taught Alana that all things are achievable if she has the confidence to pursue them. Thanks to Dirk, she has started to develop a remarkable belief in herself. But it was not until the night of the prom that I truly saw how far our only daughter had come. To me, she was a flower in full bloom. When she came home that night, I knew she had found someone special. Dad, when Dirk and I acknowledged our feelings for each other before the prom, we had a long conversation about the kind of life we wanted to build together. We discovered that our morals, values, and views aligned, Alana explained. The rest felt easy. The hardest part for both of us has been committing to our promise to wait until marriage. That was when I noticed the look of pride that Ian had towards both of us. It assured me that his acceptance of us was unwavering. Alana mentioned that Dirk would have others drawn to him, but there would only be one he truly loved, Ian said. That struck me as a peculiar statement, and I still find it so. I asked how she could know. She replied, I have held his heart since he gave me this ring to wear. My understanding of my future husband and our journey together is already set. That statement surprised me because from the day I saw her beside her father on the horse, I had sensed something special about her that captured my interest. Admitting my feelings was challenging, a struggle rooted in my upbringing. I could see how she was gradually working her charm on me. Cheer sei crich me, said Alana in Gaelic, meaning he made me feel complete. Until he entered my life, I walked as if there was a part of me missing. Meeting Dirk that first day filled that void. It didn't make sense at the time, but it does now. What Dirk does not know is that Fen is going to start to teach me Cantonese during the school year, because that way I will at least be able to catch a bit of what he says in that language. Do you think that is necessary? I asked. Cantonese can be a hard language to master because a lot of the pronunciation deals with the way you say it. Get it wrong, and you might convey something entirely different. If I can master Gaelic, Alana replied, I'm sure that in time I will be able to master it. Besides, it's clear that it will always be part of our lives. It took a situation requiring Cantonese for you to finally admit your feelings for me. We had gone to Richmond and spent most of the day shopping at fine furniture stores. Some were known for the quality of their restored antiques. Alana's taste was quite distinct. Each piece we ended up with was top quality and built to last. It was easy for me to see her vision for our living space. A touch of the old English Victorian period could be observed in everything she selected. We decided to buy bedroom furniture sets for 2 of the 4 bedrooms, as she wanted to wait on the other 2 until we started a family. The master would have a king-size bed, and the spare bedroom a queen. Each room featured a large sitting chest at the end of the beds for winter quilts, and both included a sitting area that looked out over what we were creating. We chose our living room and dining room furniture together. The kitchen nook set had to be a custom order because she wanted 4 stools to match the kitchen island. Although it would cost more, we both believed it was important. The store owner went above and beyond to ensure it was ready for delivery next Friday. I found the sales rep very attentive. The patio furniture we selected felt slightly expensive, but she made sure it was water-resistant and durable. The colors she chose would blend beautifully with the surroundings. In time, we would see that her reasoning was sound. We went to Lowe's to select our stainless steel appliances. Again, Alana evaluated their quality along with the manufacturer's reputation. I also added a flat grill, a regular barbecue, and a smoker to our purchases before arranging delivery, ensuring all patio equipment was designed for propane use. Afterward, we called my grandfather at the restaurant to see if we could visit him. We were surprised to learn that he no longer worked at his brother's restaurant. His brother provided me with his cell phone number. The events of the previous day had been life-changing for both. With the restoration of his family's assets, he decided to retire and enjoy the rest of his days. Since they wouldn't be home until 4 o'clock, we made one more stop at a jewelry shop. It took us about an hour for Alana to choose the right piece. Thankfully, they had one in her size. It was not the most expensive, but it was the one that appeared to make her smile the most. Alana would be returning to complete her senior year wearing her promissory ring. Once she had it placed on her finger, she returned my father's ring to me by slipping it onto my finger. We used Google Maps to guide us to Lachey's family home. We met his wife for the first time and learned about their 4 children, including the fact that Suling, the youngest, was 15 years younger than her closest sibling. That was when I learned about their experiences in the work camp alongside my parents. For both Alana and me, it was an eye-opening event. The actions taken by the Chinese authorities weighed heavily on our hearts. Witnessing the consequences of the injustices my parents faced had a lasting impact on us all. Alana became quite emotional when my grandfather seriously walked me through my parents' court trial and sentence, emphasizing that they all understood the system was rigged. Their defense lawyers tried their best, but they realized it was mostly for show, knowing the outcome was predetermined. My Ling, Lachey's wife, insisted that I call her Zhu Mu, which means grandmother. Out of respect for the family's history with mine, I agreed. While sharing traditional Chinese tea, which is quite different from what is typically served in restaurants, they expressed their hopes for my relationship with Suling. We learned that after we left the restaurant, my grandfather had a serious discussion with his brother and nephew. As a result, many truths about their shared history came to light. They both agreed to part ways, understanding that the scars they carried would continue to create ongoing challenges. Sometimes, having history right in front of you makes it difficult to move past it. For them, this was true, and each decided that they must continue their lives separately in search of peace. His brother would be buying out his interest in the restaurant. That night at home, the family learned about the depth of Suling's and my lifelong relationship. Suling shared both the highs and lows, including the moments when we feared our friendship had been discovered. This provided insights into why Suling seemed to have a deeper understanding of things than the rest of her family. Alana pointed out that both Suling and I had been forced by circumstances to mature at a young age. My Chinese grandparents wanted me to honor the family by forming a close bond with Suling, not in a historical sense, but with the values found in our current society. They expressed their wishes in English in front of Alana, who did not seem surprised. I was. Alana put a huge smile on Mei Ling's face when she said, "I have known of Suling's feelings toward my future husband for months, grandmother. I was hoping that life would bring her what she wants, a man like the one she compares all others to. Before Dirk and I can make an honest decision, we will need to have a long discussion between the two of us before moving towards a final choice." "Lachey, I am still committed to my search for the truth," I said, trying to diffuse the situation. "I need you to discuss the potential danger that might come to those associated with me as I explore the past, with grandmother and your daughter. The next time we talk, we will take this discussion further. Alana is aware of the possibility of being at risk. Suling is not. Dirk, Consider carefully what I am about to tell you, Lachey said. The emotional challenges my brother's son put Suling through for years have made it difficult for her to trust. When she sees an eligible man, her first instinct is to withdraw. Grandfather, I replied, I know what her older cousin put her through. Remember, I was the one who had to deal with the emotional turmoil she faced. There were no secrets between Suling and me during that time. As a result, she currently does not plan to marry. Even my wife feels disappointed due to circumstances beyond her control, Lachey disclosed. There is only one man she trusts unequivocally, and we both know that is you. That is why she has expressed her desire for you to be a part of her future family. It was your support, the way you taught her to think things through, that helped her navigate those challenging times, Lachey said. When she quietly approached the temple, you were always there for her. You became the calm in the midst of her storm. Her cousin has caused her pain, and I suspect he may still be connected to harmful influences. We know that the request we are making cannot be addressed today, Lachey said. If we had not discovered yesterday that you are the Wuming, I would not have considered my daughter's request. Suling has often said since her teenage years that only one man should be an influence in her life, and that is you. Alana, you and I both recognize how special Dirk is to both you and our daughter, Mei Ling said. Please use your wisdom to guide him in his decision, but make it clear that it is ultimately his choice. The last thing any of you need is to feel obligated or trapped by external pressures. Dirk, remember I knew your father better than anyone, Lachey said. He would be proud of the man you have become. Tread carefully, for the truths you uncover may not always align with your expectations. Just as we were saying our goodbyes, my grandfather noticed that I was wearing my father's ring. He leaned in close and whispered so grandmother did not hear, "Your father's ring holds the key to finding the password that you are looking for." As we drove out of my grandfather's place, I said, "You could have warned me. I was walking on eggshells in there. I have no clue as to what to do or what to say." "Dear, I was blindsided just as much as you," Alana replied. "I had no way of knowing what Suling had told her parents. What she shared with me was built over time through many phone conversations after we had said goodnight." "Now it makes sense," I said, "why you were not surprised." "It's even more complicated than that, my future husband," Alana said while sitting right beside me. "With me leaving the family home by the end of next summer, my mother has decided that she is still young enough to raise another child. If your dad is agreeable to that, then I feel they should go for it. They're both healthy enough," I said with conviction and full support. "Your mother is still young enough and has been through it before. Perhaps we could volunteer to help out for them." "Dad had a mild case of cancer years after I was born. As a result, because of the treatment, he can't have more children," Alana explained. "Mom wants to conceive as she did with me. After weeks of discussions, they have decided there is only one man that is acceptable to them to help my mother have the child she wants." I had to pull off to the side of the road and parked my truck. With what I had been hit with, I needed to deal with it before I could focus on driving again. I looked at Alana and said, "Why did you feel that you needed to tell me that right now?" "Because my future husband," Alana said, "the man they want to help my mother have a child, is you." "Why would they want me?" I had to ask, thinking aloud. "Well, my future husband," Alana said, "both you and my mother are at a stage in life where you have much to offer. They see your sense of responsibility and discipline, knowing it will be handled with care." "Alana, do you realize the emotional involvement we would have going forward?" I said. "If I followed through with what both sides of our family requested, it isn't just about contributing to a family. It's about the lasting connection I would have with the child." "I have a question for you, my future husband," Alana said. "How would the monks at the temple handle a request like this?" "Honestly, in the request of your parents, they would consider what they thought was best for everyone involved," I said. "In your mother's situation, they would have found a way to accomplish it with no harm, ensuring that the biological father's identity would remain unknown. It also must be noted that Zen monks are not allowed to marry," I continued. "It is common for them to have a lifelong consort, away from public view. 2 rules were established long ago that everyone must agree to. All must find their way to support them without utilizing the funds of the temple, and their partner shall enjoy all the same rights as a spouse. How do they accomplish that? Alana asked. As soon as a new monk is chosen at the age of 12, he must fully embrace the life of a monk inside the temple, I explained. Like all monks, he receives an allowance from the pooled temple funds, which is invested monthly for his future use during his training. By the time he reaches the age of 20, it could amount to a substantial sum. So, in part, they have to prepare for the possibility of finding a partner by living frugally, Alana deduced. This allows them to build a future outside in parallel. In a way, the monks are continuously engaging with various cultures throughout their adult lives. The Communist Party of China banned the practice when they came to power, I said. Even so, they could not completely prevent it. It has always been part of China's history and will remain a component of its subculture. Views on how consorts should be treated have evolved, like all things do over time, I continued. Until this century, there was a sort of caste system based on education, character, and family background. The children they bore did not have equal standing as those born to a father's wife, but were cared for according to their mother's status. It's important to note that both Christianity and Buddhism now advocate the idea that a man should typically have only one wife. It was Jesus who changed the conventional practice when he walked the earth, Alana reflected. Yet there are still Christian denominations that permit it. What prompted him to alter the established norms? Scholars have long believed that God initially allowed multiple wives to ensure the population growth of the earth, I explained. However, the misuse of this privilege led to issues, and God recognized the harm caused by those who strayed from his teachings. Jesus put an end to it, as the population had reached a point where continued growth was sustainable. That's intriguing because even in the animal kingdom, certain species require more than one mate of the opposite sex for reproduction, Alana noted. So for some living beings today, it's still practiced. What does that suggest about our Creator? I inquired. That everything he does has purpose, Alana replied, even if it takes years for us to comprehend the reasons. Fortunately, we don't have to decide anything just yet, I said, but we will need to reach some form of conclusion before visiting my grandparents again. Dad will have to go to the Mayo Clinic sometime within the next 2 years for his 4-year checkup, Alana mentioned. He'll be away for a week for a complete checkup and all the necessary tests. They will want you to take responsibility for her future. What will you be doing if I decide to accept their request because I feel obligated due to my love for you? I asked. The other thing we have to discuss is our promises to remain committed to our values until we marry. Alana grew unusually quiet, and I sensed that my words had struck a chord with her. Now you're beginning to understand the personal implications of what our families are asking, I said. In Zen, we are taught to consider all perspectives and weigh the consequences equally before making a decision that affects everyone involved. Let me rephrase that, I continued. Environmentalists advocate for reducing our carbon footprint without realizing that each breath we take impacts the earth due to the carbon dioxide we release. Alana's eyes brightened, as if she were perceiving our world in a new way. To highlight this, let's look at the bigger picture, I said. When a bird is alive, it consumes small bugs and other living creatures. When the bird passes away, those small bugs help break it down. Time and circumstances can shift unexpectedly. What we decide today may have little value in 6 months if our situation changes. I never realized that, Alana said. We are just as much a part of the cycle of nature as all living things. We are interconnected and rely on one another. Yet, some people claim this world came into being by coincidence, Alana remarked. Like me, they cannot see the connections that exist everywhere. To care for something, you need to understand its workings, I explained. It took years for Adam to name all the plants and animals. Scholars believe the task was almost complete when God paused and created Eve. Adam had a deeper understanding of what God had created than anyone who followed. That is why the restoration project is thriving, I added. Even with my knowledge, I am not the one achieving results. I am assisting nature in completing its processes more efficiently. When viewed from that perspective, Alana remarked, you realize just how minor our individual roles are in the grand scheme of things. It makes our significant life choices seem trivial. We cannot overlook the significance of anything, I said. Time holds incredible power over us because of the changes it brings. One pine tree can produce 1,000,000 matchsticks, but it only takes one matchstick used in the right way to ignite 1,000,000 trees. As we began our journey back home, Alana rested her head on my shoulder. I had given her plenty to contemplate. Most people do not recognize that every action we take has an impact on something beyond ourselves. Before long, she had drifted into a peaceful sleep with her head resting gently against me. I knew that no matter what we decided, our needs would always have to come first. By the time we were within 10 minutes of her home, I had resolved that until we were married, the requests of others would have to wait, as the potential cost of not doing so might be too great. Alana awoke when we were about 6 miles from her home. After giving her time to fully wake up, I said, "I told your father it would be hands-off in a physical way until you graduated from grade 12. That was before we vowed to each other to remain committed until we married." "I know Dad told me," Alana replied. "He's based his acceptance of our relationship on the belief that you will strive to live up to the high standard you set for us. He is immensely proud of how our relationship has developed. He mentioned that if I had been with another man, things could have been very different." "I have a question for you to consider," I said. "If we can't keep our word to each other now, what does that imply for our future?" It took a while for Alana to respond, and I began to worry, but then she said, "I think we just learned that we are going to be constantly tested by changing societal views and the needs of others. There's an old saying that goes, 'To thine own self be true.' If we are being tested, I think we both passed it." "So, what does that mean to you?" I asked. "That nothing now or ever is going to come between us, my future husband," Alana said. "Our logic will guide us as it did today in setting our priorities straight. So, if either of our families ask about their requests again, what is our answer going to be?" I inquired. "That we are not open to even discussing it until after we are married," Alana said with determination. "I will not allow the wants and needs of others to come between us now or ever. Our relationship and honesty towards each other are what matter most." I had learned a valuable lesson. Alana could be influenced by emotional appeals, but she had the reasoning to work through them when allowed to do so in a safe, neutral environment. When I shared my thoughts on what I had learned, Alana surprised me by saying, "Mom has always encouraged us to take our time and not rush into things. Just having worked through what I thought might be a life-changing situation for both of us shows me the wisdom in her words." We also learned that from now on, we will not instantly agree to something just to keep the peace. We need to carefully consider any unintended consequences before moving forward, I added. As for your mother's request, because it's only going to be a one-time event, I would be open to the idea after we are married if you give me your consent. "What about your grandparents' request?" Alana asked. "Because Suling is my sister in every way but blood," I said. "There is no way I could grant their request unless it was done by artificial means because I feel it could damage our relationship in a way that could not be repaired." "You are doing your best to remain steady," Alana said proudly, "while ensuring that you do not harm our relationship. I only hope that in our journey together, I can act in the same manner." I smiled and said, "Life is like a stream. It is always flowing, always influenced by what surrounds it. It's always moving in a direction unless outside forces intervene. It's up to each of us to decide what direction to take and for what purpose." "My future husband, again you surprise me with your wisdom," Alana said. "You clearly show that everything has a reason for its existence. Too often we act without understanding because we truly know nothing." As we turned into Alana's parents' house, Alana said, "Each night as I prepare for bed, I thank God for bringing you to me. Your insights into life and living have given me a deep appreciation for things I always took for granted." "The feeling is mutual," I said. "I no longer view things from just my perspective. I try to see them from yours as well." "You're a curious man, my future husband," Alana said. "You are constantly driven by the desire to become a better person. I have only seen you very upset twice. Once was with the so-called horse trainer, and the second was Suling's cousin. Yet you managed to maintain control when others would not have." "Believe me," I said, "it took all my training for me not to lose my temper. Thankfully, at the restaurant, I was able to channel my feelings in a different way. Those men, by their actions, pushed me nearly to my limit." "I've always had a strong dislike for bad conduct," I continued. "Most people learn right from wrong at an early age, which makes their choices appear deliberate. Yet in much of society it seems bad behavior is accepted, and those who engage in it are not held accountable for their actions. In some cultures, there are clear consequences for every action, I explained further. Breaking the law just because it's seen as popular can lead to serious penalties. Here, it's believed that people will eventually outgrow that behavior. Alana said, "I've finally figured out your long-term goal for the valley. You want it to become a place of tranquility for all living things." "You're right," I said. "The issue is that the idea of perfection has never truly existed since the time of Adam and Eve's departure from the garden." Just as I turned into the driveway, Alana caught me off guard with her serious tone. She said, "I will turn 18 during spring break next year, and I can legally get married without my parents' consent. What do you think about moving our wedding date up by about 6 months?" I turned off the truck and looked at her, realizing she was completely serious. After a busy week, David and I took a break to catch up on our progress. We were seated at one of the picnic tables we had built while landscaping around the old mine's office. We were out by one of the collection ponds near the gold mine, evaluating if we could drain one of them completely by redistributing the fluids into the others. Based on the current fluid levels, it seemed feasible. "Do you think it would be okay to bring in some professionals to evaluate the gold mine?" David asked. "It would be helpful to know if reopening it aligns with today's mining standards." "Yes, that's a good idea," I replied. "Perhaps we should consider closing the pond that is closest to the mine. We can remove all the contaminated rock and soil to the former strip mine for recycling. This way, if necessary, we could rebuild a larger containment pond that can be reverted back into sand when no longer needed. That would facilitate its natural restoration to blend in with the topsoil," David acknowledged. "It might also help break up the density of the soil we are creating, which could be beneficial." "The real question we need to address with accounting is whether we can afford it," I noted. "According to accounting," David replied, "the startup loans are decreasing quite rapidly. We're well on our way to recovering from the large loss incurred during the first year. The additional revenue from the iron ore company could finance the initial work for the gold mine if it's feasible." "We're further along than I initially thought," I added. "We should look into the possibility of starting the concrete road on this section of the property. If we proceed with opening the gold mine, we need to be prepared for a small subdivision of houses. We should begin leveling off and filling in the land. There are a few miners who might consider buying here if there was a store offering basic groceries and gas," David suggested. "We could initiate the subdivision off the main road we've already completed. That way we can level off the land as we lay out the subdivisions, working back towards the mine offices." "You're the engineer," I responded. "Please pass it through legal to get their feedback. We should start before the professionals complete their assessment of the mine. Make sure they're from a reputable company because I don't want what we're accomplishing ever being questioned." "Fair enough. I'm going to be hiring a couple more crews for the construction department because with the push on for the rest of the road, we can be constructing on both sides of the land instead of being one-directional." David added, "The road going toward the gold mine side will be quicker because we don't need to do any blasting. Just so you know, Alana and I bought a lot of the furniture for the house," I said. "Most of the stuff will be arriving in 2 hours, so I am going to be listing the trailer for sale. The new owner will have to remove it." "That space, once freed, would be the perfect spot to build a 4-level apartment building," David said. "The only concern is that I don't want to have the residential buildings being deserted after the mining is done." "That will not happen because as soon as the iron ore is removed and the hollowed-out mountain is concreted in the way we agreed," I said. "The first thing is to put in will be the metal framing to hold oak barrels we will fill to be aged over long periods, then an electrical system that will automatically turn the barrels at the same time each day." "Oak barrels? What are they going to hold?" David asked. "That explains the need for darkness and coolness because it helps to retard natural evaporation. 3 different types of single malt scotch," I explained. "That can be made into 3 double malts or a blend of all 3 at bottling. Whiskeys, bourbons, and ryes don't age in bottles like most wines do." "You sound like you have a lot of knowledge about making scotch," David added. "Are you sure you can set this all up?" "I have the basic knowledge, but I would bring in a man named Angus McGregor, my godfather's grandfather, if he is still alive at that time, to oversee the setup and organization of it. If I am weak in any area, it's the cooking of the grains and the barley to get the right consistency needed to make a premium product. Dirk, I'm not surprised to learn that you had your next step all planned out. David disclosed before asking, "What happens to the grain and barley when you are done with it?" "In the old country, the common practice is to turn what's left of the mash into cattle feed," I said. "Some of the farmers back there believe it is a great supplement to their cattle's steady diet. Here we could spread it out to provide feed for the deer and other similar animals." "Does Alana know about your plans?" David said with a laugh. "Not about bringing out her great-grandfather, but the rest, yes," I replied. "She's come up with a new suggestion that I'm trying to figure out." "What's that?" he asked. "She turns 18 just before spring break and wants us to get married then," I said. "What brought that on?" David said. "Alana got her promise ring last Saturday before the start of her final year," I explained, with the promise that she would receive her engagement ring around her 18th birthday. "Congrats, but I'm not really surprised," David said. "Alana has always been headstrong, almost as much as you. What surprises me is that I have never seen the two of you argue. I guess I must have gotten a funny look on my face because he was right. That told me there was a depth to our relationship that needed to be understood. My adopted father, the master, had always said that when you saw a male and female animal working together to accomplish something without making a sound to communicate, it was best to leave them alone. Their relationship was deeper than most. Where possible, we should allow them to fulfill the assignment that had been set for them by the Creator of all life. It was his belief that all living things, regardless of what they were, had a role to play in the overall balance of the earth. The problem with mankind was its greed. We often pursued tasks in the cheapest and fastest ways, frequently disturbing the natural order without understanding Mother Nature's reasons for existence. When we upset the balance of nature, it would find a way to respond to what it had experienced. Few who understood the spiritual side of our world could see that, regardless of the interpretation, the ultimate goal was the same. All would find what the Creator had initiated on planet Earth, the tranquility reminiscent of the Garden of Eden. The journey and path of life were designed to bring us back to where it all began. The Creator may not have set all races to start over in a new garden on the same planet. At that stage of life, everyone would be given the opportunity to learn God's truth without interference. That would mark the beginning of a true test of humanity, as each person would undergo a final evaluation. Those who succeeded would have eternal life. Those who failed would meet an end. According to Zen teachings, we as humans were still in a phase of growth, much like using training wheels. Proof of this could be found in medical textbooks, as scientists and doctors believed that the human mind was capable of much more, yet felt constrained by something beyond their understanding. I was busy assembling the various pieces of equipment and furniture that Alana and I had purchased together as the Lowe's team installed the appliances. The stainless steel stove, fridge, dishwasher, and microwave, once hooked up, made the kitchen look complete. The washer and dryer, along with the large freezer, were brought in through the huge barn door that I had opened. What amazed them was how much open space there was for storage. The delivery drivers thought it was every man's dream because it was perfect for an open workshop and storage of men's toys like motorcycles or boats. I had to admit that David's decision to use a door handle-less system for opening the kitchen cabinets was right on the money. We had used cut stone to lay out the floor. After spreading a thin layer of stained concrete, we applied the stone. Using a putty knife, we filled in the spaces before sanding it down, sealing it 3 times and polishing it. I received many compliments from the delivery drivers about how stunning the design looked. The contrast of the stainless steel with the stone floor, white drywall walls, and the oak cabinets with a white edge at the bottom blended beautifully with the oak-stained butcher block countertops, creating an impressive aesthetic. This combination gave the kitchen an open European theme that showcased the seamless flow of the space. I was glad to hear the compliments about the house and its design. Everyone was impressed by the privacy, the view, and how deceptive the outward appearance of the house was. 4 different trucks had come and left, leaving me with the joy of assembling and cleaning up the protective wrappings. I was hauling out the first batch of cardboard and wood pieces from the dining room to start a burn pile when the Connors showed up, all 3 of them. Mom and Dad were just dying of curiosity, Alana said with a laugh after giving me a warm hug. So we have come with a packed supper and hands to help. After unloading the back of the truck, I learned that, as a surprise, Alana and Bonnie had spent last Sunday shopping for dishes, kitchen accessories, bath towels, and linens. As Bonnie said, these were the items that transformed a house into a home. When Bonnie and Ian saw the dining room set we had picked out, they were amazed. They thought it was beautiful. What surprised them was that the china cabinet and hutch were two large pieces that complemented the space perfectly. I had completely set the whole thing up. The huge table seated 8, with matching chairs and 2 captain's chairs, all made from oak. Bonnie had to say, "I know how much something like this can cost. Dirk, if you're going to be going into debt to pay for this, you will have to find a way to return it." "Bonnie, I paid cash," I replied, "which will be replaced when I sell the trailer. The house itself cost less than $40,000 to build, and I paid for it with cash as well." "Alana, is this true?" Bonnie asked, seeking verification. "Mom, I was with Dirk when we got the 200-year lease on the land," Alana explained. "It's payable once a year, like county taxes. Dirk used a cashier's bank draft to pay for the construction of the home and received a registered receipt and title. We as a couple decided later that day that if we could not afford to pay cash for something, it would have to wait," I added. "Dear, we have to keep reminding ourselves that our daughter and her future husband have a different perspective," Ian said. "Their logic and approach to life is so different. Like with their home, I understood, but I could not see until it all came together. Now that I see what they have designed for so little, I feel envious." Bonnie teared up and said, "Alana told me last Sunday that she wanted us to consider giving them our blessing to get married during spring break next year." "Ian, I now have to admit that they are more mature and ready for that step than we were when we got married." "We will have to talk about that privately before making a decision," Ian said. "For now, let's open the bottle of champagne and celebrate the setup of their future home." Once the bottle was uncorked and the liquid poured into the new, quickly rinsed glasses, I led them through the French doors out to the patio after turning on the outside lights. Lowe's had pre-assembled the outdoor cooking equipment, and it only took a few seconds to set the patio furniture out. It was the first time the 4 of us could see the pond and the small waterfalls illuminated by the reflection of the outdoor lights. It added immensely to the atmosphere of the space we had created. We had modified the layout by extending the patio into an L shape and placing a 4-foot-high wrought iron black railing to prevent accidental falls into the pond, except for the steps leading into the pond, which were closed off with matching gates that could be locked to restrict access. "Seeing it like this is amazing," Bonnie said. "You could sell this place instantly for a huge profit because of this stunning setting you have created." The sun was setting behind the west side of our mountain, allowing the ambiance from the gas-burning lights to begin. For Ian and Bonnie, it was the first time they had seen it. Alana and I smiled as they seemed captivated by it just as we had been the first time we saw it. It truly was a memorable moment for them. To be honest, besides enjoying the wonderful spread Bonnie had brought, not much more was accomplished because of the magic created at that moment. Alana had spent quite a few hours talking about the first time she saw it, Bonnie shared. "I thought she had been exaggerating, but it really is unique, even from this distance. Once the word gets out, it's going to be a popular spot for couples starting their relationships," Ian said, "even for an older couple like us. You could watch the dance of the flames for hours as the flickering light and shadows created an ever-changing scene. Before we all left for the night, Alana got me to agree to pick her up at 9 Saturday morning so we could begin making the house our home. I followed them out until I had to turn to head to my trailer. I did not realize that Alana and her mother had another surprise lined up for me that Saturday morning when I pulled in to pick her up. I knew something was up because of the strange car sitting in the driveway. As I climbed out of my truck, I noticed that the hood of the newer model car was still warm, indicating its recent arrival. Ian had the front door open before I reached it. "You are just in time to join us for breakfast," he said. "We're using the kitchen table today because of Alana's guests." "Before I forget, can I use one of your horse trailers tomorrow?" I asked. Alana suggested it was time to move our horses up to the property permanently. "Yes, that daughter of mine is determined to make her spring wedding happen one way or another," Ian said with a smile. "Once you are completely moved in and set up, We will have to sit down and discuss the options. Then it's safe to say Alana's guest is not the minister she had planned to ask to officiate the service, I replied lightly. True enough, Ian said, chuckling. But I would not be surprised if she pulled a surprise like that just to encourage us. We walked into the kitchen still talking. Fen and Suling were there to greet me, and Alana stood beside them with a bright smile. Zhao Shang Hao Wo Dei Ai, the three ladies said in unison, which means good morning, my love. Good morning, ladies, I responded, slightly unsure of how to reply. Alana, congrats on your pronunciation. It was almost perfect. How long have you been practicing? As long as Suling and I have been talking on the phone, Alana replied with a joyful expression. Throughout breakfast, Alana's mother realized that the three ladies who wanted me in their lives were all present. During that time, the Connors learned the whole story about our intertwined lives. Suling shared how her father had learned that I was the Wuming, noting, "It was a real shock for me to find out that my father brought Dirk to the temple. I had no idea Lachey was my dad. It truly changed my impression of him." For some reason, there's a plan behind it all, Bonnie said. Makes me wonder what the future holds for the four of you. Suling, you must understand, I added. Your father's main concern was for my safety. Your mother no doubt influenced the decisions he made because their own lives were in danger due to the fact I was with them. Even for me, Fen said. My dad saying that you and I would be sharing a space until state released your parents was puzzling because it was never explained to me what was going on. My brother knew the whole story. They told him because he was older and more mature. It was not until they were released that I learned the facts. Fen, your parents were probably given the choice to leave China or stay, I said. Your parents most likely realized that they would be under closer scrutiny because of your uncle's relationship with them. The cost was that they were allowed to leave with just enough to start over. Why do you think that? Fen asked. Because China releases no one from their society unless it provides an advantage to them, I explained. My grandfather believes that your brother was and still is connected to the Communist Party of China. If that is true, then the Chinese government will know shortly or may already know where I am. It may also explain why it was so easy for them to go. We were all surprised by the look that came over Fen's face. There appeared to be a lot of things running through her mind. After a few minutes of deep thought, she said, One of the things my brother brought with him was a computer from China. None of us have been allowed access to it. Every few months he gets updates and new parts that come via registered mail to a post office box he has rented. Dirk, what do you think about that? Alana asked. Since nothing is known for sure, it sure looks suspicious, I said. It would be best for all concerned to act as if he is. What Fen must figure out for us is if his lifestyle can be supported by what he makes from working in the restaurant. If not, where is that extra income coming from? From that point on, we got into a discussion about Alana's and my forever home, as she called it. Suling said, the temple Dirk grew up in was made of old stone. It's been there so long that it blends in with the natural landscape. I can't wait to see it. Suling and Fen followed us up to our new home. Mom and Dad Connors would be up later. Once I found out that the girls were planning to enjoy our pond, I told them to prepare accordingly. We stopped at the small park to give them the first view of our home up on the plateau. From that point of view, it appeared that the barn was the biggest thing up there. Both Suling and Fen were impressed with the whole operation. Alana proudly explained how we had used the first few blasts into the mountain to lay in the foundation of the creek. That is when I got into a discussion of what I was going to use the tunnel for when they were done mining. Suling pointed out that I would need an office building for the staff and suggested a potential location for it. Alana and Suling engaged in a discussion about how the backside of the building could integrate with the mountain and how the surrounding area could be landscaped to create a spacious home with a bit of a yard. During their conversation, they moved a bit away from us, giving Fen and me some privacy. Does Suling know that you are aware of her wishes? Fen asked. Your grandmother, my aunt, informed me earlier this week. I'm not sure, but just to clarify, Alana and I won't be making any decisions about those matters until we're more settled in our marriage, I stated clearly. Completely understood, Fen replied. Suling has cared for you for a long time and finds it difficult because it's not you she is in love with. She considers Alana her friend and confidant. I just hope a wonderful person comes into her life and brings her happiness. Maybe time will grant your wish, I said. That would be the best outcome for everyone involved. With that, we resumed our journey to what would be Alana's and my permanent home. Ni dai lai le yi dianjia, ni chuang zhao le shen mei, Suling remarked upon seeing the exterior of our home, meaning, you brought a piece of home in what you have created. Before we got to work, Alana took her parents on a tour of the house. When Suling commented that the pond resembled one that had been hidden behind a temple, I truly understood the depth of her observation. Around 4 p.m., I went to grab a pair of blue jeans to use as makeshift swimming trunks when Alana's parents arrived with our 2 horses in a trailer. Suling was amazed as Alana led Toby and my horse to their new stable. "Mrs. Connor, did your husband train that horse to respond to Alana like that?" Suling asked. "No, that was mostly Dirk's and Alana's doing. Alana says her future husband has a special connection to all living things," Bonnie explained. "The more I see him interacting with wildlife and animals, the more I believe it." "Not only with animals," Suling added. "He has a positive influence on all humans he meets. Few are true peacemakers. Dirk has always been one. I've witnessed him resolve disputes when many thought it impossible." Afterwards, both parties acknowledged that Dirk helped them recognize their own misunderstandings. Any child of his is bound to have a blessed life. Was it really that challenging for Dirk in China? He hasn't shared much. Alana says what she knows has come from others, Bonnie stated. The life of a monk is very structured, disciplined, and quiet. His days were devoted to learning, and he didn't experience childhood in the way most do. He had to learn to be a man from the very beginning, Suling explained. He practiced his martial arts daily, as his master insisted on perfection in all things. Dirk had to learn the hard way that what his master wanted did not exist. The more knowledgeable Dirk became, the more his fighting skills were used to provide the temple with extra money, Suling said. Until we left for the USA, as far as I know, he had never lost a fight or had his costume torn. He is just that good. Dirk knows how to stand up for himself, but he dislikes having to do so. Have you seen Part 1 and Part 2 of the movie called Kill Bill? Yes, my husband and I both feel that because of the style in which it was put together, it's one of our favorite movies, Bonnie answered. The old Chinese martial arts teacher could have been modeled after Dirk's master, Suling explained. Even all the other monks were afraid of him. Dirk often said that his adopted father had a stone-cold poker face and could hide his feelings from everyone. The only time he ever saw emotion from the master was the night they said goodbye by the consulate walls. That explains why Dirk has a hard time expressing his emotions, Bonnie said. Alana says he never directly told her that he loves her, yet he has expressed, because of my love for you, I could. Alana was overwhelmed when Dirk revealed in front of us all that it was his intention to marry her, Suling explained. The tears were clearly visible in her eyes. For Dirk to say that publicly proved to us who knew him just how he felt about her and that their relationship was serious. Dirk is very protective of her, Bonnie said. From the moment he saved her life, they have been inseparable. At times, I feel they are communicating without words. One of the sacred teachings of Zen is that one should strive all their lives to have balance in all things, Suling said. They believe that those always striving for it will have a favorable or fulfilled life. I would never have thought about that, Bonnie said. But if you look at what he's created here, that is the goal he's set for it. He wants to create a space where all can coexist. Just then, Ian and Alana came out of the stable after having set up the stalls for the horses. Both Bonnie and Suling could see the pure joy on Alana's face. Having their horses home was bringing her one step closer to her goal. "Mom, Dad told me it was your idea to bring the horses up with you," Alana said. "Dirk and I want to thank you. Did you bring your bathing suits as I asked you to?" "Yes, and a cooler full of steaks that we can cook up on the barbecue. They are buried under the huge salad I made to go with it. Where's that boyfriend of yours?" "He's down at the trailer getting a pair of shorts that he will use for swimming," Alana explained. "He should be bringing a couple of bottles of sparkling cider he was saving for a special occasion. Since the house is now all set up, we thought we'd throw an informal housewarming party." "Ian, grab the cooler and the clothing and let's all get changed," Bonnie stated. "I know we all have been eager to try the pool out." By the time I got back, they had all changed and were waiting for me. Alana and her mother came out to meet me, each dressed in bright, comfortable swimsuits. I had brought a dozen cobs of corn along with some drinks. The first words out of my mother-in-law's mouth were, "The house is beautiful. Everything seems to flow together. You and Alana should be very proud because it's a job well done. Not many homes make you feel warm and welcome, yet this one does." Seeing Fen, Suling, and Alana together in their matching swimsuits was quite a sight, and I felt a mix of admiration and shyness. The four ladies were the first to head into the pond while Ian and I prepared the drinks. We could hear their joyful reactions as they stepped into the refreshing water. I chuckled to myself, knowing the water comes from the mountain. As Ian and I set the drinks on the patio tiles, I realized that nobody had brought out towels. I quickly went to retrieve some. Upon my return, Ian had joined the others in the pond. It was clear that the water was even better than we anticipated. It made the area feel so much larger. The ladies quickly got accustomed to the temperature and enjoyed exploring the area, finding a ledge that let them relax without having to keep moving. They all remarked on how pristine the pond's water was. Fen and Suling sat on one of the steps leading into the pond, half in and half out, chatting about the warmth and inviting nature of the space. Suling mentioned that it reminded her of a pond behind a temple, offering me a moment of reflection on the three ladies in my life. Suling and I were only a year apart in age. Since moving to the States, she had developed a unique confidence and presence that caught the eye. Despite being on the slender side, she was truly stunning. I found myself considering how I could help Suling connect with those around her. Fen had embraced Western culture with ease, showing a confidence that made her stand out. It made me wonder about her influences and the dynamic she had with her family. Alana was a charming reflection of her mother, and I was grateful for the cold water which kept my thoughts grounded. The only physical difference was that Bonnie had a bit more meat on her bones. Yet both, in their own ways, were quite appealing. My mind flowed back to a summer day when my adopted father, the master, and I discovered two mountain goats in their natural behavior. Out of sight in an undeveloped area, the animals were engaged in a typical display of nature. When it comes to creating life, we as humans are not so different from those two goats, the master explained. Being a young child at the time with an inquisitive mind, I asked him, why? For humans, it involves our emotions and desires, he explained. Both can be challenging if they are not managed. Forming a bond with someone is a completely natural aspect of relationships. The key is keeping them in balance, he said. Too often, emotional conflicts arise from unregulated desires. The drive for connection is a natural human impulse. When we allow our emotions to overtake our judgment, we act impulsively. I hadn't fully grasped what he was implying that day, but now I could. Looking at the four ladies with Ian and me, I recognized the complexities of our relationships. Each had a connection with me in different ways, and I had genuine affection for all of them. If I were solely driven by instinct, I would not have hesitated in my choices. However, I knew that my closest bond was with one particular woman who would soon be my wife. The master's wisdom had taken years to resonate with me, but now I understood it clearly. Each of the four women was captivating. It was easy to appreciate the beauty of the moment. "Dirk," Ian said, "you seemed lost for a moment. Is everything all right?" "In a way I was," I replied. "A teaching from the master came to mind. I saw it in a new light and finally understood what he was trying to convey." "Shall we get out of the pond and let the ladies enjoy the space while we start to cook the steaks?" I suggested. So that's what we did.